let's look at House Bill 135 that was on the floor yesterday. We had this bill we were following throughout its journey so far up to this point, and this would basically limit the services that illegal aliens, whatever you want to call them, refugees, whatever it is, limit the services that they get to partake in of our tax dollars, and really just save it for emergency life-saving events or things of that nature. I want to show a clip from Representative Clow and Representative McCann because they both stood up against this bill and had their arguments, and then of course show one of the Democrats' arguments as well. But before we get into that, Alman, we had discussed how that these bills, the same thing with Medicaid, the same thing with just identifying illegals, telling us that this is a hot topic across the country, right?
Yeah, immigration obviously is one of the big electoral issues, leading to President Trump returning to the White House, and they've been working on the federal level to shut down the open border. But part of the problem is that we have these layers and layers and layers of state and federal laws that incentivize people to come here, incentivize people to, help deliver illegal aliens into our state. And then once they're here, there's, a bunch of programs that they're able to qualify for. And now, people will say, oh, technically they don't qualify. Technically, you have to be a citizen. Well, yeah, technically. But there's federal rules in place that prevent you from actually verifying if somebody's a citizen or a refugee or has some legal status before giving them these benefits. Representative Tanner found that a couple of years ago that when establishing Medicaid benefits, you're not actually supposed to verify their citizenship, and that seems backwards. So we do need laws at the state level to make sure if we have to have these welfare programs, they should be prioritized for our citizens, not for people who just happen to wander in from another country, people who are citizens of another country.
Yes, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, there's some Republicans out there that don't quite agree with that, and they try to look for little details, look for specks in the paint to say how we got to throw out the entire job here. Here's Representative Clow out of Twin Falls, Republican. Let's watch this.
When I'm looking at the bill, the one line that really caught my attention is we're crossing out the access to soup kitchens. And I'm trying to determine how that works. My wife is a volunteer at a mustard seed in Twin Falls, which provides free food to people. They come in once a week or once a month and get boxes of food to take out. It's not necessarily a soup kitchen, but would my wife need to require proof of residency in the United States if she provides food? And if she does, is she responsible for violating some letter of the law?
Round three.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This would be only for taxpayer funds. So many of the soup kitchens will use nonprofits status as well. So if they're using funds that have been contributed or donated, there's no issue there. It's only for the taxpayer funds. So the soup kitchen would have to reconcile which is taxpayer funds and which is not.
Round 25.
Okay, thank you.
For debate on the motion.
Okay.
Late for 6.
Again, another great example there of just trying to find one little thing in there that can say this is why I won't vote for this bill. Let's listen to Lori McCann out of Lewiston, District 6, I believe. Yep, let's listen to her.
Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill, please.
The lady has the floor to debate.
Thank you. In committee, we went back and forth and had a lot of really good discussion. And I understand the good intent of this bill, but we've said in this body many, many times that words matter. And there are soup kitchens that have funding that come from whether it's state or federal, as I have looked into this, and all of those would be unavailable. And I've thought to myself, so if I'm volunteering in a soup kitchen and a young mother and 3 little young kids come in and they're hungry and they look at us and we say, where are your papers? Do you have documentation that you are a U.S. citizen? And And if they can't, you say, I'm sorry, we're going to deny you a hot meal today. And I'm thinking to myself, why, as a Christian woman, I could not turn them away. And I would say, I will give you the food, and I will take the repercussions of giving them a hot meal. And how does this body want to be remembered? Do we want to be remembered that we're going to turn away hungry children? I've asked for some amendments, and I've been told that we aren't going to do that in this body, but hopefully when it goes across the rotunda. But I don't have faith that that will happen. And I understand we don't want to be a sanctuary state. We don't want people flooding to Idaho because we're going to give them all sorts of benefits. It was said in committee multiple times, just send them to Washington, Oregon, or California because they will get better benefits over there anyway. Well, the truth of the matter, folks, is they're here. And I don't know if any of you have ever been hungry, that you have not sure if you could feed your kids. Well, a time in my life, many years ago, I didn't know if I could even afford to buy milk for my children. And I had a job, but I was going through a divorce, and quite frankly, it was a terrible, terrible feeling. I had parents that I didn't want to go to, but I did, because I'm a very independent person. But these folks don't have anywhere else to go. Are they here illegally? Under this, yes, they certainly are. But many of these folks, as I said, have no other alternatives. They're here for whatever reasons, but they are here. And are we going to turn them away? So in this bill, the way it is written, I cannot support that we would look at hungry children and that we would say, sorry, but you're not an American citizen, so we are not going to give you a hot meal. For those reasons, I have to be no on this bill, and I would urge you to put your red light on and say we need to fix this before it goes any further. Thank you.
For the debate on the
All
motion.
right, Alman. I think before we get your take, I think Representative Hawkins had a good answer for those first two comments there. Let's watch this.
2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate in favor lightly.
Gentleman has the floor.
I've heard it mentioned on the floor today about Christian charity. The thing that I would mention about that is, and I've worked in food lines and food banks, and never once in 40 years have I asked anybody for their identification to do so. And those measures were always supplied by the church that I belong to. When we speak of Christian charity in this body or anywhere else, I would just like us all to remember my Christian charity isn't, I don't have the ability to force you to give. And as Davy Crockett said in his letter to Congress, it's not yours to give. This is the money of the people. And when we make these decisions, we need to be very, very careful about what we do. And like the gentleman from 22 has already said, this isn't denying anyone anything. They are able to go out and get these things. We're just not going to compel the people of the state of Idaho to pay for it. That's all this is talking about. So this doesn't interfere with charity. If people are worried about kids eating or any other thing that can come up, then get out. I can get out my checkbook and take care of that. But I don't have the right to take your checkbook out to take care of that.
Alman, how right is that, right?
That's Representative Hawkins is always so great on matters like this. Again, referring to Congressman Davy Crockett's point way back almost 200 years ago that, yeah, just because money is being appropriated for something you think is a good idea, that doesn't mean it's yours to give. And the assumptions made by Representative McCann are pretty astounding. She talks about the hypothetical poor children who need a hot meal but aren't citizens. Well, what about the poor children who are citizens who, things are finite. Money and food are finite. So there has to be priorities. But secondly, just this assumption that charity relies on government. Charity relies on confiscating tax dollars from the citizens to support them. which is entirely backwards. There's charities that operate without government help, and those charities are free to prioritize as they see fit, free to give to whomever they want. Why is it the job of the government to support these and keep them going?
Yeah, absolutely. Great points there. Representative Lucas Kaler hopefully will be joining us in a moment, but he weighed in on this debate yesterday as well. We have a good clip there, and then maybe we'll follow up with him when if he's able to show up. But let's listen to this.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to remind everybody that the U.S. government is not a charitable organization, and tax dollars are not charitable donations. Quite frankly, this bill disincentivizes people to be here illegally. If people want to come and migrate to this country legally, there are standing laws that have allowed that process to happen for a very long time, and I am fully encouraging of people who want to better their lives and the lives of their families to come here under the legal process. But for those who come here and abuse our tax dollars to their benefit, well, that's morally and fundamentally wrong. Furthermore, the people who, once again, don't have a voice in this matter, which is important why we are the voice for them, are our constituents, the people who fund these entitlement programs. So I would absolutely ask everyone to, again, look deep down inside and remember who it is that they got elected to represent, and that is the good citizens of this state and the taxpayers who are funding these entitlement programs, and I would ask you to support this bill.
Yeah, another great point. Who are you here to serve? Who's voted you in, right?
The Amity Schlaze is an author. She wrote a great book about the Great Depression called The Forgotten Man, where she points out that the forgotten man was not the poor person who needs charity, because they're not forgotten. They're getting charity, and they're getting government welfare ever since the 1930s. The forgotten man are the regular taxpayers going to work whose money is confiscated to pay for all those welfare programs, but they don't make enough to influence the political process. They don't make enough to demand a meeting with the president or some cabinet secretary and say, hey, you've got to do things differently. They don't make enough to lobby. They just make enough to support their family and to have it taken away to support others. And that's really who needs representation. That's who Representative Kaler there was referring to as those who their job as legislators is to be their voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Our final clip on this matter comes from Representative Clint Hostetler out of the Twin Falls area as well. So let's let him bring it home.
24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill.
Has the floor.
I spoke on this in committee, and I used a quote that the good lady from 17 was addressing, and that quote goes, "Compassion stops at the door of irresponsibility." Health and welfare, education, our two biggest budgets. Anytime we try to do anything to stop those, the increase, the bloat, we're hit or bombarded with these emotionalist, terrorist narratives of grandmas are dying and children are starving.
Speaker, objection.
Lady from 34, state your objection.
I would question whether or not the gentleman wants to use a word like terroristic as a part of his floor debate.
Emotionally, absolutely. Because we're hit with the same narrative every time.
Good job. Be careful. We don't want this getting out in the weeds.
I apologize.
Turn it back down. Let's hear your debate.
You got it. The same narrative comes up every time when we try to address these issues. If we try to address the core of these issues, the same narratives come up. We are not doing the responsible thing by our people. All of us were elected by our citizens to represent them. We need to demagnetize. We continue to squeeze the toothpaste, and the toothpaste comes out, and instead of putting the lid on, we just keep squeezing that. We need to do the right thing by our people, put them first, and address these core issues and be responsible for our citizens and for these social safety nets that are necessary for the state of Idaho and its future. I'm definitely a green light on this.
Things got a little spicy there too. He's right though. Every time they try to address these things, it may not happen on the floor, but the rhetoric outside is always that, like, look at these extremist, terrorist, people, taking away all these rights and violating babies.
Yep, same thing happened last year when they stripped out a provision for summer EBT cards. The Democrats and the
Right.
media said that those Republicans who were doing that, they hate children and want children to starve and die. It's ridiculous rhetoric, and Representative Hostetler was right to call it out.
Yeah, absolutely.